You're probably wondering, how many times or how long will the narcissist keep hurting you? Hello everyone, welcome to this channel. This is a place where we learn together to stay aware, stay strong, and rebuild our confidence. Because around us, there are people with manipulative or narcissistic traits that can weaken us. But don't worry, here we'll uncover the signs and learn how to protect ourselves. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video, so more people can open their eyes and realize they are not alone. Remember, you are valuable, you deserve happiness, and you are much stronger than you think. So, how many times does it take? How many times can someone in a relationship with you, any kind of relationship, act in ways that invalidate you, belittle you, violate your rights, exploit your vulnerabilities, make you feel unsafe, distort your reality, or betray you before you finally say enough? What's your number? It's not really a fair question, is it? Many of us like to imagine that our tolerance would be low, maybe 1 time, 3 at most. But the truth is rarely that simple. In my own life, I can admit I've let it climb into the hundreds, even the thousands, because walking away isn't always straightforward. And that's what makes this moment so ironic. As I prepared to record this video, I was reflecting on exactly this, and then I stumbled across an article that only reminded me of how impossible these situations feel for survivors of toxic relationships. After years of enduring mistreatment, after questioning yourself endlessly, even getting sick from the stress, you finally find words, narcissism, emotional abuse, that explain your experience. At last, you have a framework to understand what happened. But the moment you speak up, you're told you're being petty, overly sensitive, dismissive, or even destructive to your family and marriage. People say it's your communication gaps, your lack of patience, your failure to see things from the other person's perspective. But here's the truth. Being an empath is not the same as being someone else's full-time trauma therapist. That is not your job in a relationship. Yet the blame is constantly shifted back onto you, as though if you can't fix a toxic, abusive, harmful relationship, it must be your fault. Relationship advice out there loves to repeat the phrase, "It takes two." And so, if you reach a point where you disengage or go no contact, the finger still points at you. But that's not reality. The media doesn't help either. And when I say media, I mean especially the traditional outlets, news agencies, advice columns, the old school platforms. They don't really acknowledge narcissistic relationships. Instead, they cling to the idea that every relationship can be fixed with enough effort and empathy. They downplay or outright dismiss narcissism, framing it as something too rare to explain what so many people are actually living through. This privileged stance essentially says, some people are allowed to go around breaking others, and the rest of us are expected to patiently understand them and clean up the wreckage they leave behind. The loudest tool traditional media wields is avoidance. Avoiding the word narcissist, avoiding naming the problem for what it truly is. And fine, if we need to, I'm willing to play along with the idea of avoiding labels. We don't have to say narcissist. We can use any word you want to describe the person who repeatedly betrays, deceives, projects, shames, denies, rationalizes, invalidates, gaslights, rages, withholds through silent treatments, and lashes out with hypersensitivity. But here's the big hammer that always gets swung. Figure it out. Try to understand them. Don't label them. Maybe you didn't try hard enough. Not everyone is the same. Maybe they are acting out because they are struggling too. And so you did that. You tried. For a year, 10 years, 50 years, maybe even 80 years. How long did you keep trying? What's your number? It's already hard enough to recognize these patterns while they are happening, because they often come from people we love, people we want to hold on to, people we share children with, people we rely on professionally, or people we have long histories with. These are the people where, despite their cruelty, we still manage to spot small flashes of kindness or good moments and cling to them, even though holding on hurts us. We want to make these relationships work. But here's the brutal truth. Making it work rarely means that the narcissistic person changes. It usually means we silence ourselves. We take on the shame and the blame. We keep showing up even when it breaks us. We keep forgiving, forgetting, or even dissociating just to survive. That's what making it work really demands. And then there's another layer. All the so-called conventional wisdom about surviving toxic relationships is often handed down by people who sit in positions of privilege. They're the ones who have the social power, the money, the influence, the credibility, the resources to set boundaries, push back, be heard, or access support. But the less power you have in society, the harsher the abuse hits, and the less likely others are to believe you. So when I see a glossy article, or a polished TED Talk, or a lecture by some well-paid professor at an elite university telling me that there's no such thing as toxic relationships, or that I just need to stand my ground, set boundaries, and be brave, I can't help but laugh. Because sure, if I lived in their world, maybe I could. But most of us don't. Context matters. In fact, one article I read even included a comment suggesting that the very awareness of narcissism is just a dangerous generational trend. The claim was that people like us, people who use words like toxic or narcissistic, are destroying families and relationships by writing people off as irredeemable and cutting them off too quickly. As though survivors speaking truth about abuse are the real threat, not the abuse itself. When I read that, I thought, wow, there are really people out there who think this way. And that's the heartbreaking part of all of this. Most of us don't believe the narcissistic people in our lives are irredeemable. What we feel, more than anything, is sadness, deep sadness that it couldn't be different. We wanted to love them and feel safe while loving them. We invested years of our lives wishing things could change, trying to make them change, spending countless hours in painful rumination, and shedding more tears than we can count. It was never about standing on a moral pedestal and declaring, "You're narcissistic, you're irredeemable, you're a terrible person." That's not where most survivors come from. Instead, we grieve for them, for ourselves, and for everyone else caught in the crossfire of their behavior. But then comes this narrative, this accusation, that by talking openly about these relationships and naming them for what they are, we somehow become villains bent on destroying other people's families and relationships. And what strikes me is how little thought goes into those kinds of comments. People who say things like this rarely pause to consider that almost no one distances themselves from a relationship unless they've already been crushed by it over and over again. They don't stop to ask what kind of patterns and behaviors were happening in that relationship that drove someone to finally disengage, to step away, or even to end it completely. What's also revealing is how much of the difficult person discourse ends up circling around the workplace. And I think I know why. Because the experts who dominate these conversations, the professors, the authors, the polished keynote speakers, don't really want to wade into the heartbreaking mess of family, intimacy, and love. It's simpler, cleaner, and more orderly to frame the issue as a workplace problem. And to be clear, I'm not saying workplace narcissism isn't harmful. It absolutely can be. It can wreck careers, cause serious emotional distress, harm your health, derail your finances, and, if you can't leave the job, create a long-term nightmare. But the emotional stakes are different. Boundaries in the workplace look one way. Betrayal, blindness, and trauma bonding look another in the private sphere of home and love. And while there are always exceptions, by and large, setting a boundary with a cheating partner is a profoundly different experience from setting one with a difficult colleague. So yes, this might sound like a rant, but honestly, I'm tired, and I'm angry. Angry at seeing so many people who have been so deeply hurt, yet still want to keep a loving place in their hearts for those who harmed them, while also knowing that the only path to survival sometimes means stepping back, disengaging, or walking away entirely. And what makes it worse is that the world, and especially the media, doubles down on the shaming. They frame those painful, gut-wrenching decisions as if they are sloppy shortcuts or cowardly exits. That narrative is wrong. Please, if you ever come across that kind of message in an article or comment thread, put it down. Don't take it in. Every day I see professionals, people who should know better, minimizing this reality. And if the experts can get it so wrong, then a random commenter online certainly doesn't deserve your attention. This fight is something many of us face every single day, and as exhausting as it is, it remains a fight worth engaging in. Perhaps the real question isn't what's your number, but rather what's the number for the world? How many times does someone have to be hurt in a relationship before society finally accepts that stepping back is valid, even necessary? If we're honest, the answer may as well be infinite. Far too often, people are willing to let others be sacrificed on the altar of their idealized belief system, that every relationship can be fixed, that forgiveness is always the answer, that it always takes two to tango. One of the hardest parts of healing, then, is learning to let go of that craving for the world's approval, to stop waiting for validation from people who will never truly understand. Reaching that moment of release can become a turning point in recovery. And maybe there really is no number. Maybe the shift doesn't come from counting betrayals or measuring boundaries crossed. Maybe it's the day when something inside of you finally clicks. The day you recognize the truth of your situation and realize you can no longer unsee it. It isn't about a tally. It's about that deep internal knowing, that gut-level recognition that your heart can't keep sustaining the same cycle. And the truth is, human beings and their relationships are too complex to be reduced to neat formulas, red flag lists, or step-by-step checklists about narcissism. Life becomes infinitely more tangled when you add toxic people, their ever-loyal enablers, and a society that often upholds dysfunction instead of dismantling it. Numbers and formulas simply can't account for that reality. The true challenge of healing lies in learning, often in adulthood, what safety feels like and what healthy love really is. Many of us had to bury our authentic selves just to survive in unhealthy dynamics, creating a false sense of safety at the cost of our own identity. Excavating that buried self and rediscovering what it means to be whole is difficult, painful work, but it is also possible. That's the work of healing. And paradoxically, it often starts with understanding, even though understanding has been made into a dainty word in conversations about narcissistic, manipulative, one-sided, and pathologically selfish relationships. But gaining that clarity, looking at these patterns through an honest lens, can help you recognize them sooner and begin the healing process earlier. Just remember, the world will not stand and cheer for you as you walk this path. Society will not validate your choice to step away or your need to reclaim your self-worth. That is why part of the healing journey is learning to become your own strongest advocate, your own best ally. Stop looking for applause and stop reading the comments. They were never written to set you free.